Hello ITBS media family, welcome again to another session on Linux. The first lesson we explained what Linux is. We discussed about the Linux family, that is the Linux distributions. We mentioned some of them, and we looked at the composition of Linux, and we said Linux is made of kernel, which is the core software that every other thing runs on and is hard-coded. And I explained that Linux can be tweaked. That is, it is an open source and free, and it can be modified by the nature of the application that is installed on it, the kind of graphical user interface, and the system tools that are built into Linux. And that is why we have different distributions, which we call Linux distro. Today we mentioned few yesterday when I was in the first lesson. We mentioned Ubuntu, we mentioned Debian. Ubuntu is actually a derivative of Debian, and we mentioned Real, we mentioned Arch, we mentioned Linux Mint, if I remember, but if I did not mention it, there's another one that is called Linux Mint. Then we have Parrot OS, we have Kali Linux, we have Arch. So there are so many that are out there, so many distros of Linux that are out there. And now we want to proceed into looking deeper into what Linux is all about, what is the advantage. And I explained that a lot of devices, beginning from personal computer to smartphones, some IoT devices, transportation equipment, industrial equipment, and so many other runs on Linux. And for anyone who wants to excel in cybersecurity, it is important you are familiar with what Linux is, because even those who, the malicious actors, are vast in the knowledge of Linux, and they use it to perpetrate their actions. So if you want to secure any environment, definitely you must know the tools in and out, so that you can have maximum benefit of using that tool. And that is one of the reasons for this particular series on Linux, to help build those who intend to go into cybersecurity, or those who are already in and are not that familiar with Linux environment, to bring them up to speed. So that's just a brief recap of what we discussed in the first lesson, which was the introductory part of this series. So if you are, and another thing is that if you are overwhelmed by the number of Linux versions out there, this video is for you too. you already know Linux, and but you just know this exists, you don't know which one you should pitch your tent with, then this series might help you. Today I'll explain what Linux distribution is and help you choose the one that fits you best by guiding you into what these distributions are all about. And one thing you must first understand is what I've explained earlier, that the kernel, remember we said Linux has 4 compositions: the kernel, which is the actual Linux, then the application layer, then you have the system tools, and you have the graphical user interface, which we popularly refer to as GUI. Alright, so the next thing I want to say now is that a complete system that you can actually work with, because Linux itself is not useful if it has no application, it has no system tool, and it has no graphical user interface. The usefulness is almost zero. You cannot use Linux without all these components. So a complete system includes the Linux kernel and the applications, the system tools, and the graphical user interface. So when you have a distro like Ubuntu or Fedora or Real, this is a complete system. It has all the necessary layers built into them. So the next question is, why do we have different distros? Why do we have so many? The simple reason, or the simple answer, is there are different users and there are different needs. So diversity of purpose has led to the emergence of different distros. For example, you have distros that are very good, are specially built for cybersecurity operations like forensic operations, penetration testing, and other activities like application testing, bundled together into a particular distro, so that you go in there and pick the tool, the application you want to use that is relevant to your current need. So that is the reason why we have various customizations. I will call these distros customizations, different customizations of Linux. And let's look at let me show you the different distros. Okay, here we have Debian, we have Ubuntu. You can, maybe you've seen their logos before, or you're coming across it for the first time. If you're coming across it for the first time, up at the left corner is Debian, and by the side is Ubuntu, as you can see, and below Debian in the left corner is Parrot operating system written Parrot OS, one word. And you have Kali Linux. Kali Linux is and Parrot OS are built for similar purpose: cybersecurity operations with bundles of security testing tools. In there you have a Bob suite, you have tools that you can use to test database, that you can use to test network, like Wireshark, and a lot of tools. So that is just to give us a brief example of what we're talking about when we say distros. So I will be moving into specific, and in this particular tutorial I'll be focusing on Ubuntu as our example. We'll use Ubuntu because Ubuntu is very good for starters. Is user friendly, and you can easily navigate around Ubuntu. So I want to use Ubuntu to do a kind of a walkthrough for the first few pages of experience you should have as someone who is new to Ubuntu or who is new to Linux in its entirety. So whether you have a Ubuntu distro or Debian, there are some commonalities, and once you are familiar with one, you can easily navigate your way through others. That is the beauty of it. If you are familiar with Kali Linux, you don't need any tutorial again for navigating through Parrot OS, and so on and so forth like that. So if you're not sure which operating system, which Linux distro you need, I would say put your put it in the comment section, and someone else can probably provide suggestion, and I can as well provide a suggestion on what distro will be good for your need. So let's open our Ubuntu. So if you look at the screen, you see this is Ubuntu, and if you want to download Ubuntu, just go to ubuntu.com. If you want Debian, debian.org. If you want to get Fedora, just type getfedora.org. That's getfedora.org. I will leave this in the description below. Then Kali is kali.org. Then if you want to, you can actually use distrowatch.com to get to know more about different distros and how you can navigate yourself to where you will download them, what versions and stuff like that. So I'll put that also down in the summary. So when you have installed Ubuntu, This is what you will see when you open it. Here, the blue bar here is the place where the user name will be displayed. It's masked for a purpose. Then you have your password. Put your password in and just press the return key and you should be logged in. And once you are in, it's time to start navigating around. And here you can see, once you log in, this is the page you will see, or something similar to this. Here you can see the applications. So I think by now you should be able to imagine what I've been explaining. The kernel is the core program inside that runs all these applications. So you see this application. This is a web browser here, an application. Here is another one. You have your, like this one is I think a liberal for just like a word operating, like a word application. And so you have files, and if you click on this right at the extreme corner here, these dots, it will take you to the bundle of applications. These ones are just the ones that are displayed. There is only a few space here to display the applications, so only the ones that you're using regularly that will appear here. And see, as it is here now, this is just like when you open into, or you log in into Microsoft Windows environment. You have your Windows pane here, but if you need application, you have to go and open your Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, Publisher, Project Management, Application, and other camera and things like that, similar to this. And you can see here, you can see the volume icon. Here you have something like for the network here, and you can do a drop down here to show, and you can see the dates here. So now this is trash, and this is the home directory, home folder. We call it folder in Microsoft environment. So this directory shows the directory you are in right now based on the user that is logged in. Okay, so now let's move on to, let's assume we click on these dots right here, these square dots right here. Let's say once you click on it, let's say the image that you should have. So this is what you should have, and you can see that is highlighted because I clicked on this, and you have all the applications here. You can, if you click on this, it will show you the ones you use frequently, and if you click on all, it will bring up all for you, so you can still navigate to pull in the ones that cannot fit to the screen here. So you can see that we have more than one page of the applications. So if you imagine that you have your kernel now, your applications are sitting on the kernel right now. The applications are sitting on the kernel for you to use. But then how do you start accessing, writing data into the maybe accessing the applications, then writing data into these? So what if you want to write data here, you can write it there without opening this, and that is by going through the terminal. The terminal is the graphical user interface. It's just like in Microsoft environments. You can go into Microsoft environment and open CMD, command prompt, to do some works. And also you have a PowerShell in Microsoft, so it's just like that in Linux environment. So when you want to use the graphical user interface, what you do is just press Ctrl Alt T on your keyboard, and it should bring up the terminal for you where you can start or writing your command. And here it is. You can see the terminal has come up, and this is the icon for the terminal. So see it here, and you can see, because I installed this on a virtual box, I installed this Ubuntu on VirtualBox. That's why I have this at VirtualBox. If you install it on VMware, you might have something like that. And if you name the hypervisor that you're using, then it might even not be this VirtualBox you'll be seeing, but to be your username at. So now we have the interface where you can send in your command. So you can see it right here, and let's move on to probably the last image. So, and here I made just one operation, and that's ls. And what does ls means? List. I want Ubuntu to list all the directories in the all the folders in the directory I am currently working on. And with that ls, it brings out for me desktop, documents, downloads, music, picture, public, templates, and videos. These are by default the folders. If you have a file saved in here, like something maybe xyz.txt, it will show up here. And if you create a folder and you save maybe a txt file in it, the folder's name will show up here. And you can, if you want to change to that directory, for example, if I want to change to desktop here, to desktop folder here, what I will do is I'll just type cd, then I'll type desktop, then it will change into change the directory. So we'll move into desktop. So this is how far I will go on this particular explanation on Linux distros. Don't forget that the core Linux software is the kernel, and sitting on the kernel is the application, and after the application, then you have system tools. Example of the system tool is this ls I have just used. We have grep, you have so many other things. You have pip, you can say pip install if you want to install. So these are the tools, these are system tools that runs the command for you, ls and some other tools. So the kernel is the core program. Sitting on the kernel are the applications, and the system tools to interact with the applications. So, and we don't forget, we say we have different distros, different distributions. So what make the distribution different is the applications that are installed and versions of the Linux that each of them runs on. For example, Fedora may be running on, let's just say, version A or version 1.2.3, while Ubuntu is running on version 4.2.1 of Linux. Then on Ubuntu you have, maybe you have 10 applications installed on it. On Fedora you have 17. I'm just giving imaginary figures, not that that's not the correct number of applications installed on them. So then on Parrot OS, maybe let's assume you have 50 applications sitting on the kernel. So that means it is not the same number of applications or the same type or the same configuration of those applications that you have on Ubuntu that you have sitting in Parrot operating system. So that's why we have different that's what is called different distribution, and that's what makes them different distributions, because of the diversity in applications they carry, the system tools, and the nature of the graphical user interface that they run. So with that, I think we should have a clear picture of what Linux is and what Linux distribution means. Thank you. Remember to share the video with your friends. Remember to like the video, save it, and also subscribe if you have not subscribed. We'd love to have you as part of our ITBS media family. This lesson on Linux continues. This is the second lesson, and thank you so much for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.